There we
Hello,
go.
Stephen. Hello, Dan. Greetings from the epicenter of freedom. We love you people.
Deer Talk Now is on the air. Yes. The Deer and Deer Hunting headquarters here in Iowa, Wisconsin. Welcome once again to Deer Talk Now. We're back in the saddle. I'm Dan Schmidt along with Brad Rux. Brad, welcome back from I think we've come a long way with this podcast. Back then, it was cables and modems and everything connected. We had a telephone when we wanted to talk to somebody, have their picture up on the screen. That's what we had to work with then. And it was live. We did it live every Wednesday at noon. 12 years later, we're still doing this, but I think we have the podcast really honed in to where people can really learn, share experiences, and share tactics. But also in the hunting community, when you have people with so much experience, a perfect example of this would be Ted Nugent. I know he's a polarizing subject to some people, but a very knowledgeable man. And somebody like Dr. Stephen Ditchkoff from Auburn University, one of the cutting edge researchers on whitetails for many years. You bring those two people together in a venue like this, and you're going to be able to advance the dialogue on some of the hot topics that have been popular in this deer hunting community, especially over the past couple of years. And that's what we're going to show you today.
Everybody out there, the most important thing, if I may be so bold as to represent Dan and Stephen's spirit, all the people listening right now are our fellow herd managing, backstrap, conservation, spirit blood brothers. So big greeting to all of you, and we really appreciate you being here today. Isn't that right, Steve and Dan?
Hey, I agree. I think this is a great opportunity to kind of share some thoughts, debate some things, and, come together. I mean, I think we all have the same goal. We're all interested in the same thing. And I think it's a matter of working together.
Hallelujah.
This is three of us talking deer. And as Ted mentioned, we're not going to be adversarial toward each other or our blood brothers, but we want to get some answers to some questions. So, Steve, I'm going to lead the questioning off with you. Why Michigan? Why can we trace the whitetail's roots basically to that one state?
I think it goes back a lot to the way we kind of developed and settled this nation. Most people don't realize that deer were nearly extirpated across the Southeast by 1900. Market hunting, kind of unrestricted hunting just decimated deer and other game populations. And as a result, I think they recognized early on that, boy, there needs to be some sort of rules and regulations and not just unrestricted harvest of animals if we're going to sustain these populations. There's something very unique upon which this nation was founded. That's the public own the wildlife. And the government agencies are there as stewards of the resource. And they recognized early on, some of those states, as you mentioned, Michigan, that we need to be smart about how we do this, or we could end up in a situation like we did in the Southeast.
Deer and Deer Hunting TV is brought to you by
Him and I do talk about this every day, but is political correctness overtaken some of these things? And I'm going to shift that topic. One you guys have talked to till you're blue in the face is to chronic wasting disease. Is political correctness basically taking this disease that we know is real and morphing it into something that is not?
I think political correctness is infiltrating just about everything we do, and I think it's some of the issues that Ted brought up. Some of the issues that I brought up, and probably the rest of the things that we're going to talk about. Biologists need to do a better job of communicating with and listening to hunters and other resource users. And at the same time, hunters and other resource users need to do a better job of communicating with resource stewards.
Yeah, instead of calling me, they should call the biologists. Instead of complaining to me, they should call their representatives.
That's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is we're all in this together. And, we all have our own role in this. It's every landowner out there is a steward of the resource. Ted is a steward of the resource and a voice for many. I'm not a large landowner, but I'm a user of the resource and an investigator of the resource. We all have our own role in this. That doesn't mean that there's 100% agreement in terms of what they would like the resource to look like when they go out there, because they have different goals and interests. I think there needs to be common ground, more discussion, more communication. I think that falls on the agencies. Generally speaking, and I'm not pointing a finger at any individual agency, but generally speaking, our state agencies need to do a better job of interacting and communicating with user groups. That includes agricultural producers. That includes hunters. That includes all of those individuals that are out there. And I like to use the word transparency. What's the rule? Why is it being made? Those things need to be communicated. I believe this needs to be a massive investment from state and federal agencies to be able to communicate what are they doing and why are they doing it.
Ted, what do you think? Is there a solution here? Because it seems to me that we've been stuck in the mud spinning our wheels for decades.
There's such a disconnect, but it's not because we haven't communicated with them. I got to tell you, Stephen, when I talk to people at the NRC and the DNR in Michigan and here at Texas Parks and Wildlife, I get this zombie-like stare, like I'm giving them information they weren't aware of, that CWD has the same scientific profile as scapies. Scapies have been around forever. No one's ever reduced a deer season because of chronic wasting disease. No human being has ever got chronic wasting disease from the venison we eat. And they got all these regulations. You got to debone the meat when it comes back. It might be in the skull. Well, you don't base laws on might. Meanwhile, North Dakota had to refund deer license because of episodic hemorrhagic disease. No state has ever had to refund deer license because of chronic wasting disease, so the communication is necessary, but I don't think they're listening. I think they value their paycheck and their pension more than servicing the people who actually pay their paycheck and pension. And this is the feedback I get on a daily basis. And the evidence supports everything I said.
Let me
Ted,
let me segue right there to you, Steve. I'm going to bring this back to CWD because that's what Ted's talking about. With CWD, and I know we've talked about this till we're blue in the face. There was the Wyoming study in the 50-year endemic area. They went through the death certificates, tried to link it to Creutzfeldt-Jakob's disease, could not find any link to anything, even dementia patients, whatever. But if the Sistine Chapel is on fire, and the CDC is saying you should not eat venison if it comes from a chronic wasting disease, where is the panic? Where is the fire? Where are the fire trucks? If it's such a big deal to deer, I would like to know the specific examples of where it has reduced the population. And number two, where is that threat? Because the CDC also tells me not to eat anything treated with paraquat, but strawberries are treated with paraquat routinely in other countries and sold here. So, Steve,
hello.
If this is just your opinion, Steve, if chronic wasting disease is such a threat, where is the panic and where is the response? Or where is the response to this panic?
I don't think chronic wasting disease is a panic. I believe that there are people out there that are treating it as such. I don't believe it's a panic. I do believe it's a real thing.
I don't think anybody disagrees with you on that.
Yeah, I believe it's a real thing, and I think we're still trying to get wrap our hands around what impacts it's really going to have.
Oh my God, that's a monster.
Perfect arrow.
The concept of trophy couldn't possibly be the decision of someone other than the individual. So In the realm of CWD, if you've got to reduce deer numbers, then you need to encourage people to shoot more deer, especially in Pennsylvania. What's 100,000 slaughtered on the highways every year? Same in Michigan, same in Wisconsin. They really underestimate it. They're only looking at the ones you see, not the ones in the cattails.
That's a good point, actually.
So I've heard from both camps. So I believe that quality deer management can only come from the heart. It's about what a guy wants, as long as enough people participate in the essential doe harvest. And when I want venison, I don't shoot young bucks anymore because I hunt every day, and I can wait for older deer. And it's just a historical mysticism of the stagness, the cave wall, paintings of the mighty stag. I mean, it's part of our DNA. But when I want venison or just a good day of field and reduce the agriculture destruction and the highway slaughter, I shoot does, and I shoot them by the dozens. I get more excited shooting a yearling doe, the most delicious animal in the world, than most guys do if they stand up top of the deer and go, hey, it's got pretty good mass. Would you stop with the mass? Respect the beast. Respect this deer just gave his life for you. The point being is that trophy is always an individual determination. And with the goal of reducing deer herds, I think antler restrictions are insane. And I'll finalize it with this. So in Texas, the deer's got to be 13 inches wide to shoot it. Well, what if it's an 8-year-old buck with a 12-inch rack? You can't possibly let him go. What if it's a 1.5-year-old deer that's got 13 inches? You don't want to, in quality world, you don't want to shoot that genetic is that what their goal was? Because if that was their goal, they're contradicting their goal.
Steve, you had a point you were going to make.
Yeah, I think this whole thing with regards to quality deer management, CWD, I think we're at an impasse. I think for 20, 30 years, we've been pushing real hard that QDM is generally speaking, a more suitable management strategy, all-purpose wise. Reduce deer numbers for agricultural damage, provide opportunity to potentially harvest a larger deer, have healthier deer, that sort of thing. It's not, but also Ted makes a great point that quality deer management is about the individual. Quality deer management is a philosophy, and my personal take on it is probably going to be slightly different than yours, Dan. Did a little bit different than Ted's, and different than the next person. So it's an individual type thing, and a trophy and a quality deer is individual to each of us. But we are at an impasse. We, and I'm going to use that term broadly, the public has been generally led down a path that they've bought into QDM, and it's pretty much instilled in most deer hunters that there's certain things you do to achieve your own quality herd. A good number of those things are very likely going to be at odds with addressing potential chronic wasting disease issues. When we're talking about quality deer management, you need to pass up your 1-year-olds or your 2-year-olds or your 3-year-olds to let them get older. But you also have a disease that's working against you potentially, that is sitting here saying, boy, if I let that deer live, not only do I have to worry about him surviving the next year because of roads or whatever it is, but also because of other hunters. Now I have to worry about this disease. It is going to be really interesting to see what happens during the next 5 or 10 years with regards to things like antler point restrictions, or whatever these rules and regulations are that limit hunters with the goal of enhancing quality. It is directly at odds with quality deer management. And there's going to be greater confusion between hunters and resource managers, and all of a sudden saying, well, yesterday you told me this, but today you're telling me that. And as a result, I'm gonna circle 360 back to what I said before. And I believe Ted and I are in agreement on this, but I love it. He gets riled as hell. His hair's standing up more now than it was when we started. That we have to talk. This is a marriage between resource agencies and resource users. And we are in this together, and we have to figure out how to communicate.
Ted, thank you very much. Steve, I want to thank you very much for taking time out of your day to join us for this special podcast.
Hey, I appreciate it, guys. Enjoy talking to both of you.
All right.
Godspeed. Put on your rubber boots. I'll see you in the swamps of Jackson this fall.
Hey, I heard an invitation there. I'm coming.
Yeah, Stephen, you'll think you're in Skunk Hollow along the Rouge River between Redford and Livonia.
Deer and Deer Hunting TV is brought to you by
Hey, so there you have it. I think that's one of the better podcasts we've done to date. And if you like this kind of content, you can find these podcasts wherever podcasts are downloaded, or you can watch them on YouTube, our Facebook page, and our website at deeranddeerhunting.com. You know, I love hunting swamps, and this goes back over 30 years when I used to really hunt public land hard. One thing that I learned back then that has really helped me now is that I have to look at scouting as an incremental process. And what I mean by that is today when I'm scouting, a swamp like this, it's almost impossible to hunt. Yes, there are maybe a tree here or there where I could get a stand, but it's not conducive. Blinds, very difficult, especially when you're hunting mature bucks. So what I like to use in these areas is I like to pinpoint the exit and entry routes of bucks at various times of the year. And that's where a wireless camera really comes in handy. I'm not gonna hunt this area because I know if I come in here, I'm gonna blow it out. I'm gonna educate the deer very quickly. But what I wanna learn is when the deer are coming through here, there's some really main trails coming back, and I know there's bedding areas to the south of here. There's feeding areas to the north of here. What I wanna learn is when these deer are coming through this area, and which allows me, this cutting link camera, I have another camera about 200 yards from here, another camera 200 yards from there. This daisy links those photos back to my home camera. I can scout this 6 months or a year without even coming to check this camera. It allows me to hone in, zero in on those really productive spots, because let's face it, when you're hunting mature bucks, you have to have a productive spot where you're gonna see that deer during daylight, and B, it's gotta be close quarters when you're bow hunting. You're gonna have to be in an area where I can set up a stand and hunt him and get a shot at him. What I'm learning from here is when he's unpressured, okay, I know where he's coming through and I know where he's coming back. I can take that bird's eye view, really hone those other areas down and hunt the perimeters of this security cover and really increase my chances.
So let's talk, since you've hunted with silencers and you already brought one up, right? The report of the firearm, that scares a lot of animal. What other kind of advantages do you get from using a silencer?
Yeah, good question. So obviously the natural one people think about is like sound mitigation, which I think is important. I think sometimes that we forget real world, typically we're hunting with someone else, so we want to protect their hearing as well. I think that also people sometimes hunt with their animals like their dogs, so they want to protect their ears. There's also, if you've been hunting enough, which I feel sure you have, you've probably forgotten to put your earmuffs on, or someone else shot and you didn't have yours on. So it's kind of a natural protection for everyone. And I think people forget that. So that's a benefit. Recoil reduction is always one that I forget to mention.
Yep.
Brakes were really hot there for a while, and it was because it reduced recoil. Well, the benefit of the suppressor is you're able to get the same recoil reduction, but you also get the sound mitigation, so you don't have to wear the earplugs. What I've noticed too in real world hunting scenarios, especially larger game, you can hear the impact of your bullet, and you can typically tell if it's a kill shot, just because,
Really?
typically when you take a shot, the blast is so loud, it sort of covers up the impact shot. But
Yep.
I've hunted big game so many times that when you hit, you could tell if it's a solid. If you hit bone, or it's just a good. And of course, I still love the prairie dogs. It sounds like a wet towel popping them when you hit them, so you know for sure you hit them. So I'd say those are the major benefits. I mean, also it helps accuracy, just having a little bit of weight on the end of the barrel, similar to like a bull barrel. It helps your accuracy. It speeds up your velocity a little bit, so there's no negative impacts there. So overall, it really enhances the hunt.